After 3 years of marriage, the young Canary Paige had been raising finally confronted me. She shouted at me, demanding to know how a haggard housewife like me dared cling to Paige's side. I calmly lifted my gaze. Because I was the one who stayed with him through his darkest years. The girl tilted her chin arrogantly, her eyes filled with disdain. So what if you met him a few years earlier? Is that supposed to impress anyone? Paige arrived just as his little Canary and I stood locked in confrontation. He walked slowly toward me, gently tucking a strand of hair behind my ear. Ella, why are you here? I raised my phone. You asked me to come. Paige's brow furrowed slightly. The girl behind him grew agitated, clutching his arm. Paige, I'm sorry. I sent the message from your phone. I just couldn't bear this life anymore. She turned and glared at me. If she hadn't been taking over the position of Mrs. Paige, we could have dashed. Get out. Paige cut her off before she could finish. What? The girl froze, tears welling up in her eyes. Mary. I said get out. His voice remained steady, his gaze icy. But why? Her lips trembled, face pale. She probably couldn't understand how the man who'd whispered sweet nothings to her in bed yesterday could turn into this cold stranger today. Paige chuckled darkly. You think you deserve to compare yourself to my wife? I knew then this girl would never touch Paige's world again. Foolish child mistaking a rich man's game for true love, daring to show me off. I first met Paige when he was 8 years old, and not the youngest son of the Paige family. Both of us had been trafficked and sold to a wealthy household. We spent years in captivity until the police rescued us and sent us to an orphanage. Though we still faced hunger, bullying, and false accusations at the orphanage, it felt like paradise compared to our previous life. No one wanted to adopt us because we are too old. Paige and I have been supporting and relying on each other throughout our journey into society. We have experienced the bitterness of being cheated and the embarrassment of being treated with contempt when eating a bowl of noodles together. During the coldest winter in the city, our rented apartment lost heating. Leaning against Paige's shoulder, I stared through frost-veined windows and asked, Paige, what's your dream? He gripped my hand firmly. To make mountains of money and marry Ella in the grandest way possible. Ella, that's me. Paige kept his promise. He gave me a one-of-a-kind diamond ring and a wedding gown crusted with gems. Our wedding procession stretched for miles in flowers, while 520 drones painted the sky with a meteor shower spelling my name. The society pages raved about the Paige family spending $1 billion on the wedding. Everyone said they envied me, that a prominent family like the Paiges would let their heir marry a nobody like me. But I knew the price Paige paid. There are still traces of being whipped by the family law on his back. The Paige family urged Paige, therefore Paige worked until midnight most days. Jet-lagged from constant international flights, he once spat blood. Watching his thinning back, I was heartbroken but powerless to do anything. All I could do was temper my nature, striving to become the perfect Mrs. Paige. At a dinner party full of dignitaries, the wives got together and talked casually about their husband's affair. Love seems like a joke to them. When my silence stretched too long, Madam Chen took my hand. Ella, you should get used to it in the future. The business of Paige's family is growing in Paige's hands. He will raise some flowers sooner or later. I was stunned and shook my head firmly. Paige would never. Mrs. Chen smiled, neither agreeing nor denying. She said, when people stand high in power, they will face countless temptations. Her eyes lingered on me, her gaze growing distant, as if seeing through me to some other reality only she understood. I never believed Paige would betray me. So when I peered through the door crack and saw him allowing one woman to kiss him while another undid his shirt buttons, I felt like I was dreaming. I have never seen Paige like this. He sat there lazily, took a smoke casually, and the smoke blurred his face. The cold feeling seeping through my limbs gradually spread to my heart, making me unable to move. It wasn't until a guest noticed my ghostly pallor and gasped Ella, that I recovered. I forgot what Paige looked like at that time. I only remembered that he pushed the women away, hurriedly chased me and held me tightly in his arms. "Don't cry, Ella," he rasped repeatedly into my hair. "I love you, only you." He said that he only loved me, and such a thing would never happen again. I couldn't tell if the words were meant to comfort me or absolve himself. It is said that when encountering something painful, people first think of escaping. But if you escape, can things be regarded as not happening? That night, I looked at Paige's sleeping face, tears were flowing silently, and my heart was hurt. Once the seed of doubt is planted, it will take root and sprout in the heart. During that time, I felt like I had become a paranoid psychopath. Every business trip Paige took, every cocktail party he attended, every vibration of his phone, every call he answered, they all became the reason for my anxiety. The inevitable explosion came on a night when Paige returned late. His coat carried the lingering sweetness of gardenias. I questioned him and shouted hysterically at him, breaking not only all the valuable porcelain in the house, but also our wedding photos in the hall. "Ella, in this circle, no one can stay completely innocent." Paige kneaded his eyebrows feebly and looked at me in a complicated way. "I am sorry for you, but you're the only one I truly love." Paige left, telling me to calm down. I collapsed onto my knees, covering my face as I wept uncontrollably. The broken glass sliced through my palm, blood and tears pooling together on the floor. I've thought about divorce countless times, but I couldn't accept it. I just couldn't. I tried to fight the world's temptations with my shallow love. Guess how that ended? The bottled-up pain made me suffer from depression. I trapped myself in memories, in the promise Paige once swore to me. Mrs. Chen was the first to notice. She sighed deeply and gripped my hand. "Ella, you're walking the same path I did." I stared at the ground, my heart sinking. I wonder if Paige feels guilty. His wife tried to slit her wrists at home, while he drowned in pleasure, arms wrapped around someone else. Mary wouldn't be the last canary in Paige's gilded cage. Days later at a party, whispers reached me. Paige had taken in a sister duo as his new sugar babies. The elder gentle and poised, the younger bold and glamorous. Rumors swirled that two sisters were very open about sex. No wonder, when Paige came home, he looked a little satisfied. Paige returned unusually early tonight, his body carrying the fresh scent of shower gel, likely having bathed after some event. "Aunt Lou said you painted for 3 hours. Tired?" His arms circled me from behind and buried his head in my shoulder. I set down the brush, escaping his embrace to organize my palette knives. "Not really." During my depressive episode, I was keen in painting. Perhaps because only when holding a brush would I subconsciously forget the suffocating people and matters. "Ella, your painting is so beautiful." His tender voice made the corners of my eyes curve involuntarily. Yes, it needed to be better. This painting was meant as a gift. "By the way, Mother asked if we're returning home for New Year. She said your phone was unreachable." He meticulously cleaned paint stains from my fingers with a damp wipe, handling them like precious porcelain. "No." I refused categorically and withdrew my hand. This mother was my biological parent. Over the years, Paige has been using his relationship to help me find my family. Finally, the year before last, he found it. My biological father has passed away, my mother has remarried, and she gave birth to a sister for me. She is a senior in college and will graduate soon. Her real purpose of letting me go home for the new year is to let me arrange work for my sister and join Paige's company. My mother said she felt guilty about me, so she gave my sister twice as much love. But now that I'm back and we've made up, shouldn't you be nice to me? But the fact is that she seldom contacted me. I always sent her messages, telling her to pay attention to safety when it rained, keep warm when it snowed, and give her gifts during festivals. I told her I was allergic to celery, but she put it in my bowl anyway. What's the matter? Have you made trouble with her? Paige rubbed my hair and smiled. I don't want to maintain this relationship any longer. I'm tired. In the future, she's no longer my mother. I looked into Paige's eyes and said faintly. Maybe my words were too straightforward, and Paige was stunned. I don't know what he thought. He pursed his lips tightly and looked up at me. Ella, you've changed. Have I? Definitely. Paige blinked at me like a child, with a tone of grievance. You no longer ask when I'm coming home for dinner. Stopped choosing my neckties. But Paige, people don't change all of a sudden. When I asked about your schedule, and you said you had a job, but in fact you were having sex with other women. The tie I chose for you will be removed in a different way between the sheets. These constant reminders of your betrayal disgust me. On New Year's Eve morning, I was pasting spring couplets by the door of my art studio when Paige called. He said he'd return early tonight to celebrate the countdown with me at home. All right, I replied simply before hanging up. Stretching on tiptoes, I struggled to reach the upper part of the doorframe. Just as I debated fetching a stool, a pale, slender hand suddenly steadied the slipping red paper. I turned to find myself gazing up at a young man. He was wearing a white sweatshirt, with a smile in his peach blossom-like eyes and a tender look in his brows and eyes. Comrade Xiao Zhao, how could you start decorating without me? I first met Ethan Hahn at an art exhibition. Ironically, it was the only show Paige had ever missed. He'd always cancelled meetings to accompany me before. It is also coincidental that every time I visit an art exhibition, Paige will push off the meeting to accompany me, only that time. At that time, I stopped in front of an oil painting full of sunflowers. Its strokes made me feel familiar and reminded me of the undersea painting I bought in a public welfare activity a year ago. The wives who accompanied me thought I was crazy and spent $30 million to buy a painting of unknown origin. I am not a spendthrift. I bought the painting purely because I saw myself in it. Hesitant, painful, struggling self. The sunflowers in front of me are warm and brilliant. If the two paintings are the same author, I am still curious about what he has experienced in a short year and how his mood can change so much. It was then that Ethan appeared. When I looked up, his intense gaze trapped me. Do you like it? His voice held a smile. It's yours if you want. I thought he was joking until the organizer of the exhibition found me and put the painting in my hand. Since that day, Ethan Hahn has appeared frequently in my life. Even if I was a wooden man, I knew what he was thinking. I have stressed the fact that I am married more than once, but he is still as usual and ignores my warning to him. Finally, the breaking point came during an outdoor sketching session. You know what? I hate you who are willing to be a junior and destroy other people's families. Can you stop appearing in front of me? I really feel sick when I see you. Ethan Hahn was stunned for several seconds, and his back was very lonely before he left. What I said that day really worked, but it only lasted for 2 days. Ethan has an outgoing personality, which is the opposite of mine at that time. However, he shares some similarities with me. Once he decides on something, he won't give up easily. I sometimes get a headache from his stubbornness, but at some point, I'm glad he's always standing behind me, and when I need him, he's there like an angel. When Ethan Hahn and I got out from the amusement park, the sky was dark. The mobile phone buzzed and vibrated. Paige was calling me again. I simply turned off the phone. It doesn't matter if the phone isn't answered. Ethan Hahn raised an eyebrow and her voice was soft. I chuckled and asked him, where next? He happily took out a pink helmet and put it on me. Finally, he bent over and knocked on the helmet, giving me a meaningful look behind him. Go to a place where he can't find us. When the motorcycle started, the tires made a harsh noise on the ground, and I subconsciously hugged Ethan Hahn's waist. He drove me through the open streets and deep paths, with the whistling wind and the lights of thousands of homes. Before long, gorgeous fireworks bloomed in the night, and Ethan Hahn shouted in the air. In the new year, I hope Ella can go forward safely, happily, and boldly. I smiled and shouted like him. It was late at night when I returned to the villa. There was no light on in the hall, and there was a strong smell of smoke. Paige sat wearily on the sofa. When he saw me coming back, he suddenly stood up and forced a smile. Ella, your phone was off. Did you spend New Year's at your mother's? I hummed in vague agreement, clinging to the convenient excuse he'd handed me. Just about to turn off the light to sleep, Paige's hoarse voice suddenly sounded in his ears. Ella, I dreamed you fell for someone else. That you left me. A pause hung between us before he pressed, tell me, will you always love me? When my silence stretched too long, he leaned forward, desperation sharpening his gaze as if he could wrench answers from my eyes. I suddenly felt a little funny. Fate is really a cycle. In the past, I asked myself more than once, does Paige really still love me? At that time, I felt that he seemed to love. He planted flowers in his yard that I liked, bought the expensive city on my birthday, and set up an art foundation in my name. One year I was ill, and in order to pray for my safety, the snow fell all over the sky, and he knelt from the foot of the mountain to the top of the mountain. Right? Does he love me? But his love can be shared by many people. He can love me, but at the same time he is ambiguous with other women. I know Paige gets around. In that circle, threesomes or even group encounters are quite common. The ladies drinking tea together also persuaded me not to value love too much. But I refused to fold. So I started looking for details in my life. To prove that Paige loves me more than any other woman. It took Ethan's quiet words to shatter the delusion, real love doesn't need proving. Likely due to the New Year festivities, Paige had been staying home for the past few days. When I returned from the art studio, I was shocked to find him in the kitchen, wearing an apron and cooking. What made you suddenly decide to cook? I leaned against the wall, staring at him in disbelief. Ella. I've been thinking about our past. Paige raised his eyes and looked at me, his gaze gentle and full of affection. Those days we struggled side by side, no one else could ever take that place. His words left me momentarily dazed. The past, a phrase that felt distant now. At 21, Paige had declared, I'll only cook for my wife, and love no one but her. At 22, he'd whispered, childbirth is too painful. Ella, let's never have children, okay? By 23, his voice turned desperate, Ella could live without Paige, but Paige would die without Ella. At that time, our hearts were higher than the sky, and there was only each other in our eyes. We always felt that true love was invincible. Later, we learned how naive we'd been. True love may conquer, but it also disappear like the wind. Just thinking about it, I suddenly felt boring. What's on your mind? Paige came out after taking a bath, hugged me behind him, and sprayed warm breath on my neck. He experimentally bit my earlobe, expertly shoving my nightdress up. Ella, let's have a child. Yes, truly disillusioned. Paige was no longer the Paige of old, and I was no longer the Ella I once was. I pressed down on his wandering hands and turned to face him calmly. Paige, I'm afraid of contracting AIDS. Paige's face turned pale and stared at me for several seconds. In fact, on New Year's Eve, you found me, didn't you? After coming out of the playground, I noticed a car following us. That's Paige's car. He thought our relationship would be the same as before as long as we didn't make it clear. Little did we know that the calm lake was turbulent, and our marriage was already in jeopardy. Ella. Paige's voice trembled. I sighed. Paige and I have known each other for 20 years and married for 3 years. At this moment, our fate has finally come to an end. Do you remember the fire at the villa? I asked him. Of course someone forgot to turn off the stove. But actually, I set that fire intentionally. Facing the shocked eyes of Paige, I suddenly felt relieved after reading all the past. I'm someone who clings to the past. Everything from our time in the rented apartment, the washing machine and TV, down to the paper crane Paige folded for me remained untouched, stored in a dedicated room. But that fire nearly destroyed all my memories with Paige. Noticing something unspoken, Paige hesitated as he met my gaze. You're right. I started the fire to burn it all. The moment the fire broke out, thick smoke billowed up. Suddenly, I had a terrifying thought and walked straight towards the flames. Had Ethan not called me that moment, I might have died in that fire. Why? Paige gripped my hand, his voice breaking. You're asking why? Paige, do you truly not know? I looked up at him. He staggered back, his face pale. I walked to the bedroom, pulled a box from under the bed, and emptied its contents. Every time you flirted with another woman, I wrote a letter. 56 letters all here. Opening a drawer, I spilled pills from a bottle. What I take every day is not a health supplement, but medicine for depression. Under Paige's stunned gaze, I unbuttoned my shirt, revealing the scar on my abdomen. I lied and said I got this hiking. The truth? I turned my head away, tears streaming down my face without my control. Paige, we had a child. I lost them, in the car accident. Only this faint scar proved our baby ever existed. Ella, why didn't you tell me? Paige's eyes reddened, his voice raw with pain. I did call you, Paige. But you were busy role-playing with some woman in bed nurse costumes, remember? That day, bleeding and trembling, I didn't dial 120. I called you. The phone rang endlessly. I begged your name through sobs until a woman's giggles answered. I heard that woman say shyly that she didn't want to play the nurse role again next time, and I also heard Paige said lazily that it was fine, followed by the sound of tearing open a package. At that moment, I held the phone tightly, my heart torn apart, as if countless cold arrows pierced my body. When my consciousness began to blur, I saw Ethan anxiously pushing through the crowd and rushing to my side. His lips moved soundlessly. Clutching his hand, I repeated, "It hurts." It was really painful, not only physically but also emotionally. I'm not telling you this for pity, Paige. I want you to know we're done. Paige sat on the edge of the bed, his eyes dim, his hands weakly running through his hair. I broke my promise. This is my punishment. Why did fate hurt you instead? His voice cracked. How did it come to this? He suddenly burst into tears like a child. Yes, how did it come to this? I'd asked myself that endlessly, we who'd loved so fiercely. Only now I understood. In this relationship, I had shown my utmost sincerity, so the one who should be regretful and unwilling is not me. Paige. Let's divorce. After composing myself, I calmly said these words. I also want to move forward. I looked out the window and let out a gentle sigh. A cold wave suddenly hit the city. This winter seemed colder than ever before. Ethan wrapped a scarf around my neck, but I resisted, feeling it didn't match my outfit. Comrade Xiao Zhao, he grumbled through teeth, those who ignore good advice will regret it. Despite his words, he still put my hand in his overcoat pocket and held it tightly. It was at this moment Lily appeared, her expression darkening as she stared at our intertwined hands, her frown deep enough to crush a fly. Lily, my biological mother. Now seated across from her in the cafe while Ethan waited outside, I steeled myself. What do you want? Ella, are you truly divorcing Paige? Yes. Marriage is no joke. A man in Paige's position is bound to have affairs. You must learn to tolerate and understand him. She looked at me with a serious expression. Seeing my indifferent attitude, she showed some dissatisfaction. That boy outside is much younger, isn't he? You're nearly 30, Ella. Can you guarantee he'll love you forever? I couldn't stand her sarcastic tone and interrupted her. Did Paige ask you to come and persuade me? Her unchanged expression drew a bitter laugh from me. No. Then Uncle Dong needs Paige's favor? Uncle Dong was the man my mother remarried. A hint of embarrassment flashed across Lily's face but quickly disappeared. I only want what's best for you. Best for me? Answer this, if Gina's future husband cheated, would you give her the same advice? Gina, my half-sister, Uncle Dong's daughter. Avoiding my gaze, Lily shrunk back. I stood up and gave a cold laugh. Lily, our fragile mother-daughter act ends here. Tell Uncle Dong I'll ensure Paige abandons his failing company. As exes, he'll grant me that much. You can't do this. We're family. Her voice was sharp and her face showed anger. I sneered. We haven't shared a household register in years. What family? The divorce wasn't progressing as smoothly as I had imagined. The lawyer called again. He said frankly that the lawyer of the other party had been procrastinating and was not satisfied with how the divorce agreement was drafted. My last encounter with Paige had been 2 weeks ago, at the entrance of our villa. His jaw was bruised and his eyes were dull. Looking at the luggage I was carrying out, he asked in a hoarse voice, "Must you go? I can move out of the villa." "No need." I shook my head. As I departed, Paige called after me, claiming he'd handled that woman. I suddenly remembered the phone I picked up that day. It was noisy and accompanied by the sound of broken glass. The woman screamed and sobbed as she apologized to me. Had she not screamed my name, I might have called the police. I'd always known Paige's methods. That woman's fate likely wasn't pleasant. After some hesitation, I finally dialed Paige's number. "Let's talk about it. It doesn't make sense to drag on like this." That day, Paige drove me from the southern to the northern end of the city, talking all the way. "Ella, remember this place? This is where we bought our first parrot." He pointed to the flower and bird market on our left. "Ella, the entrance to supermarket is still as crowded as ever, no parking space at all. I wonder if the night market in the northern district is still open. Has that stinky tofu stall you loved moved away?" Not knowing what he thought, Paige bent his eyebrows. "At that time, you always liked smelly things." I stared out the window, silent. Paige didn't know after our marriage, I'd walked through all these places alone, countless times. The stinky tofu, the durian I used to crave. I hadn't touched any of them since becoming Paige's wife. "Ella, that dumpling shop we used to frequent is still here." The car stopped abruptly in front of a dumpling shop, and Paige's voice was tinged with surprise. The shop was near our old rented apartment. On rushed mornings, we'd often eat dumplings before work. During hot summers, I was sleepy. Paige would fold the leaflets on the table into a small fan to fan me. After fanning me, he gave the dumplings to me. When the dumplings were not so hot, he woke me up. In the blink of an eye, so many years had passed. "Let's eat here one last time?" Paige turned to me, pleading in his gaze. After a pause, I nodded. The shop owner recognized us. As she set 2 steaming bowls before us, she said to Paige, "Young man, you finally came back. Auntie hasn't seen you in ages. Your girlfriend kept coming alone all these times." The smile on Paige's face froze instantly. His head snapped toward me. Lowering my eyes, I replied evenly, "Auntie, we broke up." The old woman awkwardly retreated. When we were alone, Paige asked softly, "Ella, you came here often?" "Mm." After a long time, he lowered his head, and the tips of his hand holding the spoon turned white. "I'm a complete bastard." The steam was rolling, and I could not see Paige's expression. "Let's finalize the divorce papers soon. Don't make it too ugly. I don't want us to meet in court next time." As I spoke, I saw Paige's eyelashes tremble, and a drop of tears fell into the chicken soup. "Understood." His voice was hoarse. Paige's POV. The divorce of Paige and Ella shocked the whole circle. How much their love used to be envied, how much it is sighing now. Paige remained nothing but the villa they used to live in. The villa is empty, without any activity. Paige remembered they had just moved in when Ella was clinging to him and asking to go shopping for appliances. Why is it so complicated when one phone call can arrange it? He couldn't understand and asked. She smiled brightly. "You don't understand, that's what life is, Dot." At that time, Ella was holding his arm and bargaining with the head of the mall. He thought it was very cute to see her talking nonstop with her little mouth. Thinking of this, Paige, sitting on the sofa, unconsciously bent his mouth. "Ella." Paige subconsciously called out Ella's name. Unfortunately, the only response to him was the clatter of the clock on the wall. He stood up in a hurry and knocked into the corner of the table. He stumbled to the room on the second floor where they lived, but when he opened the door, there was no one he had been thinking about. A man in his 30s sat helplessly on the ground and shed tears. He wanted to look for something from the past to stay for a moment, but there was no more. Ella left nothing. In addition to the 56 letters, every time I open them, I will kill my heart. But who can blame? They are all self-inflicted evils. He betrayed Ella, marriage and love first. You've made your bed, now lie in it. When news of Ella's engagement reached Paige, an absurd thought suddenly crossed his mind. If Ella were willing, he could even be her second husband. In the end, he chuckled bitterly. He knew he was naive. Ella probably felt dislike even a single glance at him. Before Ella's engagement, Paige had gone to see Ethan. He felt he needed to meet the man who would spend the rest of his life with Ella to see if he was reliable, and if he would treat her well. Paige had waited for a long time before Ethan appeared. "Let's talk," he said. Ethan nodded and swiftly chose a location. Before Paige could even ask a question, Ethan spoke first. "If you're here to convince me to back off, forget it." Ethan had been labeled a homewrecker and endured Ella's resentment for years. Now that she was finally divorced, he was inches away from his goal. Nothing and nobody could make him give up now. "If you're worried Ella will be mistreated, don't be. I'm not heartless, and my parents adore her." Paige had already investigated Ethan's background, the Hahn family's overseas business, Ethan's older brother who had passed away in an accident. After his brother's death, Ethan had taken over the family enterprise and managed to thrive. His return to the country a few years ago was likely to expand their domestic operations. With Ethan saying everything there was to say, what else could Paige add? As they parted, Ethan answered a call, the icy resolve in his eyes melting instantly. Paige could guess who was on the other end. "Ella asked me to buy groceries and make her favorite sweet and sour pork ribs," Ethan said, adjusting his collar and casually flashing the diamond ring on his finger. "Paige, why not join us for dinner? I'm a decent cook." "Sweet and sour pork ribs." Paige's face paled. Back when he was with Ella, he used to make that dish often. After countless times, he'd asked, "Aren't you sick of it yet?" Ella had wrapped her arms around his neck and giggled, "I'll never get tired of your cooking, Paige." "No need, just treat her well." Paige thought it was really killing the heart to let him go to dinner. The day Ella got married, Paige dissolved his company. He locked himself in his villa, sitting on the floor in a daze. He calculated the time the wedding ceremony should be nearing its end by now. What is Ella doing at this moment? He wondered. Toasting guests? Handing out wedding candies? Paige, sitting on the ground, gave a bitter smile. He finally knew what Ella had felt when she found out he was with another woman. In fact, when Paige came out of the civil affairs office that day and looked at Ella's back, he realized that they would never meet again in this life. Yet he stubbornly refused to accept it. Sometimes Paige would deliberately drive past Ella's residence, hoping for a chance encounter. He didn't expect to let him meet her once. Her shoelace had come undone, and he watched Ethan kneel to tie it into a delicate bow. Another time, he saw them come out of the supermarket, Ella holding a candy skewer in her hand, and Ethan gently wiped the corner of her mouth for her. Paige felt dizzy. Those scenes of affection should have starred him and Ella. How had Ethan stolen his place? Why I lost Ella? My heart is in great agony, as if an invisible hand is tightly squeezing my heart, leaving me in a state of utter despair both physically and mentally. Paige was so exhausted that he couldn't catch his breath. His heart was so painful that he even wished he could kill himself. Those who betray true love shall swallow 10,000 needles. This curse appeared in Paige's mind as he rose from the floor. He retrieved a kitchen knife and slashed it across his wrist. Blood suddenly gushed out, dripping steadily onto the wooden floor. An old once told him, "Your destiny is solitude." He thought it was wrong then, and now he's been right. Paige sat on the balcony and opened the window. Spring breeze caressed his face softly, like the kiss of lovers, lingering and delicate. As his gaze fixed on the greenery beyond, consciousness began to fade. May the next incarnation of Paige learn to cherish his Ella.